As we approached Alaska on the flight from New York, we admired the spectacular aerial views, vast isolated landscapes with ice-encrusted mountains and glaciers, slow-moving rivers of ice. Birdwatching began soon after our arrival in Anchorage. Lake Hood, next to the international airport, is the largest seaplane base in the world. Greater scaups, grebes, and goldeneyes were keeping a safe distance from the float planes taking off and landing, and a mallard was raising a family, avoiding the turmoil in the waters. In the adjacent park, an immature bald eagle was harassed by black-billed magpies and European starlings. In nearby Westchester Lagoon, a pair of redneck grebes was nesting on the island. Another pair had 3 young grebettes in tow and hanging on dearly for fish to be brought. Trumpeter swans with 6 cygnets were cruising along as well. A family of Canada geese with a dozen goslings was on the grass next to the adjacent trail. Short-billed gulls were also nesting in the area. As the trail curved away from the lagoon, we saw 3 gull chicks at the end of a driveway, while the parents watched from across the road as people passed by. Another mile down the coastal trail, near the shoreline of Cook Inlet, a pair of sandhill cranes was in the tall grass of a salt marsh, hiding their young. We walked further on to Point Warrenzoff, where a pod of beluga whales swam by. The second major destination of our trip was Homer, a 4-hour drive southwest of Anchorage. On the way, we stopped at Potter Marsh, then Girdwood, followed by an upper section of the Kenai River, and finally at Anchor Point. More familiar birds at Potter Marsh, and then we spotted an alder flycatcher, common in that area but very hard to find back home. In Girdwood, we took the aerial tram and enjoyed stunning views from the top. At the Kenai River, many avid sportsmen were enthusiastically fishing for trout and salmon. And at Anchor Point, bald eagles, crows, and gulls were taking turns to feed on fish remains at the shore. Arriving in Homer, we were greeted by a golden-crowned sparrow carrying food to its nest. We later saw fox sparrows, varied thrushes, and savanna sparrows, also with food for nestlings. At the tip of the 6-mile-long Homer Spit were large nesting colonies of black-legged kittiwakes and glaucous-winged gulls, making good use of concrete structures, pipes, and pillars. On a boat outing to Gull Island in Kachemak Bay, we encountered rafts of sea otters floating in the cold, choppy water. Then there were hundreds of common murres, along with a few tufted puffins, and a lone pigeon guillemot floated by. The cliffs of Gull Island were covered with birds, nesting common murres and black-legged kittiwakes at the lower levels, and tufted puffins nesting in the green vegetation on the top. That evening, we watched a moose with a calf crossing the street at a traffic light. A sentinel bald eagle perched on the roof of our lodge overlooking the bay. I could watch and hear it from below or by stepping out on the balcony and running in if the eagle turned around. There was ample evidence to warrant my reaction on the balcony floor. On another day, we took an excursion via floatplane to Big River Lake on the other side of Cook Inlet for salmon fishing and bear watching. Leaving the Homer area, we headed for our next major destination, Denali National Park, with an overnight stay on the way by Lake Lucille in Palmer. Redneck grebes were nesting on the lake. One pair was on a floating nest close to the boardwalk. Early the next day, we watched a grebe, initially off her nest, but circling around it and keeping watch. After about 20 minutes, she was back on duty, shuffling the 3 white eggs to get comfortable and tweaking the nest. Proceeding from Lake Lucille later that splendid sunny morning, we stopped to hike in the Talkeetna area, where we were rewarded with beautiful wooded trails that passed lakes and ponds, many nesting Swainson's thrushes, and our first views of Mount McKinley. We next made stops at roadside South and North View Parks, before arriving at our lodge near the National Park entrance. Both view parks provided stunning panoramas of Mount McKinley and other nearby mountains. At a distance of just over 40 miles, these were our points of closest approach to the 20,310-foot McKinley summit, the highest peak in North America. The 92-mile-long Denali Park Road leads west from the Visitor Center, well north of Mount McKinley. Private vehicles can go up to mile 15, with bus service continuing out to mile 43, beyond which work is ongoing to reopen the road after a 2021 landslide. The next morning, we boarded a Denali Transit hop on and off bus, a converted school bus, to mile 43. With the sun shining, another chance to view the coveted Denali summit. From the bus windows, we enjoyed beautiful mountain, wilderness, and tundra views, and observed caribou, Dall sheep, and a bull moose, all at a considerable distance. A hike along the Savage River at mile 15, with some concern over local bear activity, got us closer to smaller creatures, and no bears. An Arctic ground squirrel was standing on guard, smacking its tail at regular intervals. Willow ptarmigans, state bird of Alaska, were seen with many chicks along the trail, blending in for safety. White-throated sparrows were perched on bushes and reeds and singing away. A short-billed gull was on the roof of our SUV when we returned from our hike and waiting to be taken for a ride. Another hike the following morning on the Horseshoe Lake Trail. Descending to the lake, we saw beaver houses and heard, but did not see, boreal chickadees. That afternoon, we drove on to Fairbanks, our next stop, with some excitement and delay along the way due to wildfires. On an evening walk along the Chena River, a search underway for a kayaker who'd gone missing. Around the Fairbanks airport, there were many birds in the trees. Northern yellow warblers and violet-green swallows. And waterfowl in the ponds, American widgeon with young, common goldeneye with 16 playful ducklings. Then a redneck grebe on the nest, and another one with a young grebette. At one of the nearby Tanana lakes, we spotted gulls, shorebirds, and surf scoters at a distance. A visit to Creamer's Field Migratory Wildlife Refuge. Cliff swallows were nesting on a barn, and songbirds, redpolls and savanna sparrows in the fields that were engulfed in brilliant yellow flowers. There were many ducks in the stream, northern shovelers, common goldeneyes, green-winged teals, and yellowlegs along the shore. We watched several families of horned grebes with young ones racing. As we left the refuge, there were hundreds of sandhill cranes next to the access road. An above-ground section of the Alaska pipeline was a good introduction to this endeavor. We would be following the pipeline's route from here at about its midpoint all the way to Valdez.